There's a sound, a tiny thump, then nothing, and then a small round face peeks out from behind a wicker basket, eyes enormous, body completely frozen. Caught. Absolutely, undeniably caught. Nobody told this kitten that wild hunters aren't supposed to get caught mid-sneeze while sitting on a slipper. Just a few feet away, a second kitten has positioned itself on top of a tiny decorative pillow, sitting very upright, very dignified, very fierce, for about 3 seconds. Then it tips forward, slides off the pillow in slow motion, and lands flat on its belly with a soft whump. It blinks once, looks around to see if anyone noticed. Someone noticed. People think Pallas cats are fierce little hunters, but nobody tells you how unbelievably goofy they are as babies. If you've ever seen a Pallas cat, you already know the face, those flat, wide-set eyes, that round, slightly grumpy expression, that thick, dense fur that makes them look like they've just been startled, even when they haven't. They are one of the most striking small wild cats on the planet. Ancient, independent, built for the cold steppes of Central Asia. Everything about them says, serious animal. But then you meet 5 of them at 3 months old, and every single thing you thought you knew goes straight out the window. These 5 kittens came into care after their mother was no longer able to raise them safely. Each one arrived small, uncertain, and completely unused to the strange smells and sounds of a human home. For the first few days, they huddled together in the back of their enclosure, watching everything with those enormous eyes. Not scared exactly, just calculating. The caretaker, a woman who had worked with exotic animals for years, had prepared a safe indoor space, warm, quiet, carefully designed to give them places to hide, places to climb, and places to simply be. She had prepared for a lot of things. She had not prepared for this. Within a week, the 5 kittens had already sorted themselves out, not by size, not by strength, by personality. The first one, the largest of the 5, decided immediately that every slipper in the house was a threat, not a toy, not a comfortable object to nap on, a threat. Each morning, without fail, this kitten would locate the nearest slipper, approach it from downwind, and then attack it with the focused intensity of an animal twice its size. The slipper never fought back. The kitten never learned. The second kitten had a different problem. Its own tail, fluffy, enormous relative to its body, constantly moving. This kitten would be sitting perfectly still, peaceful, calm, a picture of wild dignity, and then its tail would twitch, and everything would fall apart. It would spin, miss, spin again, occasionally catch it, look briefly triumphant, then release it, and act as though the whole thing had never happened. Dignity restored, tail still moving. The third kitten did not walk normally, not because anything was wrong. It simply seemed to have decided at some point during its first week of life that moving in a straight line was optional. It hopped, sideways, with tremendous confidence, into walls, directly into the water bowl once, with an expression of complete surprise, as though the water bowl had appeared there without warning. The caretaker checked it over carefully. Healthy, perfect, just sideways. The 4th and 5th kittens were more reserved, at first. They watched the chaos of their siblings with the quiet attention of animals still figuring out whether this strange indoor world was safe. But they were learning. Every day, a little closer to the center of the room. Every day a little less frozen when a door opened or a phone rang. Every day something new caught their attention, and every day those giant eyes got a little bit brighter. The caretaker kept notes, not formal notes, just a small journal on the kitchen counter, filled with entries that got harder and harder to write seriously. Tuesday, the slipper was attacked 4 times before 8 a.m. The slipper lost. Wednesday, found kitten 3 asleep inside the fruit bowl, relocated, returned to fruit bowl 20 minutes later. Thursday, cannot explain what happened to the dish towel, will not try. Every morning she woke up not knowing what she would find. Every morning was different. Every morning without fail she laughed before she finished her first cup of coffee. She had cared for a lot of animals over the years. Dogs that had been abandoned, birds with broken wings, foxes, raccoons, the occasional very confused deer. She knew that wild animals in care required patience, consistency, slow, careful trust building. She knew all of that. What she had not fully anticipated was how much 5 Pallas kittens in a kitchen could make a quiet house feel completely wonderfully alive. Some mornings standing there with her coffee, watching the sideways kitten hop directly into a cabinet door and then look up at her as if asking for an explanation, she thought, I don't know what I'm doing, but I don't think I've ever been happier. The weeks settled into a rhythm, chaotic, loud in the small chirping way that Pallas kittens are loud, occasionally exhausting. And then one afternoon, while she was sitting on the floor folding laundry, the smallest kitten walked across the room, not sideways, not in an attack posture, just walked over, sat down 2 feet away from her, and looked at her. For a long moment neither of them moved. Then the kitten looked away, licked its paw once, and lay down, close enough. She didn't move for 20 minutes. But then one tiny kitten discovered the mirror, and nothing in the house was ever peaceful again. It started with a cardboard box, not a special box, not a toy, just a shipping box the caretaker had left on the floor while she unpacked some supplies. She turned around for maybe 40 seconds. When she turned back, 3 kittens were inside it. One was on top of it, sitting with the posture of something that had just claimed a mountain, and the 5th was pushing it slowly across the floor with its head, for reasons that remain unclear to this day. She stood there holding a bag of cat food and just watched. Nobody was in distress. Nobody needed help. It was just 5 small wild animals discovering that cardboard is apparently the greatest material ever created. The box phase lasted 11 days. During that time, the caretaker went through 7 boxes, not because they were destroyed, though 2 of them were, but because once a box had been fully investigated, sat in, slept in, pushed across 3 rooms, and used as a launching pad for an attack on a slipper, it was considered retired. New box required. She started saving them from the recycling bin. On day 4 of the box phase, the tissue box disappeared. Not the full box. Just one tissue box, a small one, the kind that sits on a side table. She found it 20 minutes later, or rather she found the box, with a kitten inside it, just the head poking out of the opening at the top, sitting there, perfectly calm, looking at her as though this was a completely reasonable place to be. She took a photo. She took several photos. She gently lifted the kitten out, replaced the box on the table, and went to make tea. By the time the kettle boiled, the kitten was back inside it. Around this same time, the socks started vanishing. At first she thought she was losing them in the wash, the universal ageless mystery of the missing sock. She wasn't concerned. Then she found the collection. Behind the armchair, a small deliberate pile of 7 socks, arranged with the kind of care that suggested they had not ended up there by accident. The sock thief, kitten number 2, the one with the tail problem, watched her discover the pile from across the room with an expression of complete neutrality. No guilt, no concern, just "those are mine now." She counted, removed them, did the laundry. 3 days later, new pile, behind the same armchair, 9 socks this time. She stopped counting. The shoe ambush began in week 3. It was kitten number 4, one of the quieter ones, the watcher, who discovered that shoes left near the door created a perfect hiding space. Dark, enclosed, excellent sightlines. The caretaker learned this the hard way when she reached for her boot one morning, and something small and extremely fast launched itself out of it directly at her sleeve. She dropped the boot, said something she'd rather not repeat. The kitten landed, sat down and looked up at her with those wide, flat eyes. After that, she started checking her shoes. Every morning, every single morning, because even when she checked, even when she looked inside and found nothing, she still wasn't entirely sure. The kitten had a gift for patience that was honestly a little unsettling, but it was week 3 that produced the moment she still talks about. She had set up a small mirror, a full-length one, leaning against the wall in the hallway to help her see the kittens moving between rooms. Kitten number 1 found it first, the slipper hunter. It came around the corner at a low walk, heading somewhere with purpose, and stopped, completely stopped. There was another kitten, right there, in the wall. It flattened slightly, ears shifting. The other kitten did the same thing. It took one slow step forward. So did the other kitten. It puffed up, not dramatically, just that subtle Pallas cat thickening, the fur lifting just slightly across the shoulders. The kitten in the wall puffed up too. For a long moment they regarded each other. Then kitten number 1 did what it always did when something needed to be dealt with. It attacked. The sound of a kitten hitting a mirror at full speed is not a sound you forget. It's a soft, dense thwump, followed by a moment of profound silence, followed by the fastest possible sideways retreat you have ever seen from an animal with 4 legs. She was already laughing before she got to the hallway. The kitten was sitting 3 feet back from the mirror, staring at it with an expression of pure, offended bewilderment. The other kitten, the one in the wall, had also retreated. Neither of them could figure out where it had gone. Within the hour, all 5 kittens had met the mirror. Each one reacted differently. Kitten 2 approached slowly, tail going, then became completely absorbed in watching its own tail move. Kitten 3 walked straight at it, sideways, and then stopped when its nose touched the glass, blinked, and walked away as if that had answered every question it had. The two quieter ones sat together at a distance, watching the reflected room with their heads moving in small synchronized tilts, and then simply moved on with their day. By late afternoon, the house had reached a kind of peak chaos that the caretaker had not previously thought possible. The zoomies started at exactly 4:17 p.m. She knew the time because she had just sat down with tea. She never got to drink it. What began as kitten number 1 doing a single fast circuit around the coffee table became, within about 8 seconds, all 5 kittens running at full speed through every room in sequence, ricocheting off furniture, launching off the couch, skidding on the kitchen floor, disappearing and reappearing at high velocity. It lasted 4 minutes, then total silence. She stood in the middle of the living room, in the wreckage of a throw pillow that had not survived the event, and looked around. Every single kitten had vanished. She cleaned up, straightened the cushions, picked up the pillow, washed her tea mug and made a fresh one. 5 minutes later, the room looked exactly as it had before. She sat down, she exhaled, then bedtime arrived, and that's when the real comedy started. She had done her research. Before the kittens arrived, she had read everything she could find about Pallas cats in captivity. Their needs, their temperament, their sleep patterns. Pallas cats, she had learned, sleep a great deal, up to 16 hours a day. She had taken this as reassuring information. She had been wrong. What the research had not specified was where they sleep. The expensive beds arrived in week 1, soft, placed in warm corners with good sight lines, exactly as recommended. By the end of week 2, not a single kitten had voluntarily used one, not once. Kitten number 1, the slipper hunter, had claimed both slippers as a sleeping space, not beside them, on them, somehow across both at once, in a configuration that looked deeply uncomfortable and apparently wasn't. Kitten 2, the sock thief, had relocated to the laundry basket, not the clean laundry, the basket beside the washing machine, which contained 1 damp towel, and apparently everything a kitten could want in a bed. Kitten 3, the sideways one, had discovered a backpack left on the floor near the door, had climbed inside it, was sleeping in it so deeply that when the caretaker tried to gently lift the flap to check on it, the kitten did not move at all, just a round, dense, deeply unconscious small animal at the bottom of a backpack. She zipped the flap back down, left it there, made a note not to go anywhere until morning. Kitten 4 had taken the windowsill, not the wide padded one she had set up with a cushion specifically for this purpose, the narrow one, the decorative one, the one that was maybe 4 inches wide and held a small ceramic pot with a succulent in it. The succulent had been relocated, gently, with small precise paws, to the floor, and the kitten had arranged itself in the remaining space with the kind of geometric precision that suggested it had been planning this for days. It was snoring, lightly, almost inaudibly, but definitely snoring. She stood in the hallway and just listened to it for a moment, a small wild cat, snoring in a 4-inch windowsill. After moving the plant out of its way, she didn't know whether to laugh or simply feel something she didn't have a word for yet. Kitten 5 she couldn't find. She checked the boxes, the basket, the backpack, the slippers, the shoe rack near the door. She checked behind the couch, under the table, inside the cabinet she'd found it in before. Nothing. She stood in the middle of the room and did what she always did when a kitten was missing. She went completely still and listened. Faint, very faint, a soft, rhythmic sound from somewhere near the coat hooks by the door. She looked at the row of jackets and sweaters hanging there. One of them, a gray hoodie near the end, was moving, just slightly, rising and falling in a slow, steady rhythm. She reached out carefully and lifted the hood. Inside it, curled into a perfect circle, was Kitten 5, fast asleep, breathing slow and even, the way animals breathe when they feel completely, unconditionally safe. She lowered the hood back down, stood there for a long moment with her hands still resting lightly on the fabric. This was the part she hadn't expected. Not the chaos, she'd expected some version of that. Not the noise, or the missing socks, or the shoe ambush, or the mirror incident. What she hadn't expected was this. These small moments of total stillness in the middle of everything. The way a kitten that had arrived frightened and frozen at the back of a carrier now slept inside her hoodie like it was the safest place in the world. She thought about the first week. 5 kittens huddled together, watching her from a distance. Every movement she made tracked by 10 wide, careful eyes. Every sound evaluated, filed away, slowly added to a growing picture of, Is this safe? Is she safe? She had been patient. She had moved slowly. She had let them come to her. Always. Never the other way. And it had taken time. But here was the answer. A kitten in a hoodie, snoring in a windowsill, sleeping on her slippers like they were the finest beds ever made. Trust, when it comes from a wild animal, doesn't look the way people imagine. It doesn't announce itself. It doesn't arrive with ceremony. It looks like this, a small animal choosing to sleep somewhere close, choosing without any pressure to stay. Morning came quietly. The light through the windows was pale and early. The house was completely still. She stood in the kitchen with her coffee, actually drinking it this time, and listened to the silence. It was the good kind of silence, the full kind. 5 small animals sleeping in 5 ridiculous places, breathing slowly, unbothered by the world. She looked at her notes from the past few weeks, the sock count, the box tally, the mirror incident, which had its own page. She flipped back to the first entry, the night they arrived. 5 frightened kittens, unknown futures, a house that had felt very big and very quiet. She looked around the kitchen, at the backpack by the door, at the slippers she would have to negotiate for before she could leave the house, at the small ceramic pot sitting on the floor where a kitten had placed it, patient and deliberate, in order to take the windowsill. She closed the notebook, finished her coffee. The house was still, for about 4 more minutes. Then all 5 kittens exploded out of wherever they'd been sleeping simultaneously, hit the hallway at full speed, ricocheted off the walls, and the day began exactly as every other day had begun. Loud, sideways, completely unplanned. She laughed before she even put her mug down. Just when everyone thought they had finally calmed down, one tiny kitten made the funniest mistake of the entire year. It arrived on a Tuesday, a robotic vacuum. She had ordered it weeks earlier, before the kittens, when the house was quiet, and she had believed, genuinely believed, that a self-cleaning floor was a reasonable thing to want. She unboxed it, set it on the floor, read the instructions, pressed the button. It hummed to life, made a small navigational sound, and began moving in a slow, purposeful circle across the kitchen floor. She watched it for a moment, decided it seemed fine, and went to make tea. She heard the sound from the next room, not the vacuum, something else, a low, concentrated chirping, the sound a Pallas kitten makes when it has identified something that requires immediate and serious attention. She leaned around the doorframe. Kitten number 1 was crouched at the kitchen entrance, fully flattened, eyes enormous, every hair on its body standing at precise attention, watching the vacuum. Turned a small corner near the cabinet. The kitten watched. Its tail moved once, slow and deliberate, the way it moved right before a slipper attack. She thought, oh no. The attack lasted approximately 1.5 seconds. Full commitment, no hesitation. A perfectly executed pounce from 4 feet away, aimed directly at the vacuum's side panel with the focused energy of an animal that had decided, completely and without doubt, that this was the moment. The vacuum, for its part, did not react. It turned slightly, continued cleaning. The kitten landed on top of it. There was a brief, complicated moment, small pause on a moving surface, the vacuum humming along, the kitten's expression shifting in real time from fierce to confused, to something approaching genuine alarm, and then the kitten was off it, and moving sideways across the kitchen floor at a speed she had not previously seen it achieve. It reached the far wall, sat down, stared at the vacuum from a distance of 8 feet. The vacuum cleaned serenely on. She was still laughing when kitten number 2 appeared in the doorway, saw the vacuum, looked at kitten number 1 sitting against the wall, looked back at the vacuum, approached it slowly, with great scientific seriousness, crouched low, attacked, same result, skidded sideways across the floor, reached the wall, sat down beside kitten number 1, both of them staring. By the time kittens 3, 4, and 5 had each taken their turn, she was sitting on the kitchen floor with her back against the counter, unable to stand. Not because anything had gone wrong, because she was laughing too hard to get up. 5 kittens, 5 attacks, 5 sideways retreats, 5 small wild animals now sitting in a row against the far wall, staring at a robotic vacuum with the collective expression of creatures who had encountered something that did not follow any of the rules they understood. The vacuum finished the kitchen, made a small satisfied sound, returned to its dock. The kittens watched it go. Kitten number 1 chirped once, then they all went back to their day. She kept the vacuum. She used it every Tuesday. Every Tuesday, without fail, at least 2 kittens attacked it. Every Tuesday the result was the same. They never stopped trying. They never won. She never stopped laughing. Later, weeks later, when the kittens were older and the house had reached a new kind of organized chaos, she went back through everything she had written. The notes, the photos, the little journal on the kitchen counter. She read about the first box, the tissue box kitten, the sock collection behind the armchair, the mirror, the hoodie. She read about the first week, 5 small animals watching her from a distance, not yet sure what she was. She read about the morning she had sat on the floor folding laundry, and one kitten had walked over and simply lay down nearby, close enough. She hadn't written much about that day, just a few words. She stayed. I didn't move. I think we're going to be okay. When she thought about what these kittens had been when they arrived, frightened, uncertain, so much wildness packed into such small bodies, and what they were now, she didn't have a word for it exactly. Not tame. They were never going to be tame. They weren't meant to be. But something had happened in this house, in these months, between 5 small Pallas kittens and one woman who had not fully known what she was taking on. Something had been exchanged. She had given them safety, consistency, a warm place, slippers to attack, boxes to claim, mirrors to challenge, vacuums to defeat, and they had given her something she hadn't known she needed. The particular irreplaceable feeling of being trusted by something wild. The last scene she wrote about in her journal was an ordinary Tuesday evening. The vacuum had done its work. The kittens had done theirs. The house was quiet now, the real quiet, the end-of-day quiet, and she was sitting on the couch reading. One by one, without ceremony, the kittens found their places. The slippers, the laundry basket, the windowsill. Kitten 5, without hesitation, went straight for the hoodie on the hook by the door, and kitten number 1, the slipper hunter, the mirror fighter, the bravest and most chaotic of all of them, walked across the room, stepped onto the couch cushion beside her, turned once in a small circle, and lay down. Not on her, just near her, close enough. She looked down at it. Round face, flat eyes, that slightly grumpy, ancient, perfectly serious expression. One small wild heart, at rest. It looked up at her for just a moment, then slowly, without drama, it closed its eyes. Even the wildest little hearts just want safety, love, and someone to laugh with.